whatever game you play in life, you're going to lose. Get used to it. The best in the world are not the best in the world because they never lose. In fact, the best in the world lose repeatedly, but they've learned to deal with it. They're the best in the world because they've learned to deal with it. Therefore, learn to adapt and grow. If you take it to an extreme, you cherish your losses because that's where you're going to lose.
Sebastian, I'm super excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Same here, Scott. I am fired up for this.
Yeah, we have some correlated backgrounds in the wealth management space, so we were kind of geeking out a little bit offline on that. And the main thing that I think is super cool is you're doing a lot of things, not only great in your industry, but outside. And your latest book, The Psychology of Leadership, is a perfect example of that, where you're taking these lessons, you're going out and speaking to all these people that you come in contact on a regular basis with, and you're expanding that knowledge and wisdom with the world through putting it into word. And just tell me a little bit about what the process was about writing this latest book.
Well, you're right. You could say it's not my day job to write a book on leadership. I get that question all the time. My father is a finance professor, and when he found out I was writing this book, I sent him the manuscript. His first question was, "Are you in human resources now?" So he thought I'd made a career change. Look, I was stressed at work. And as you know, Scott, money management is a stressful business. And I wanted to improve myself, my own self resilience. I ended up talking to a sports psychologist, and he introduced me to a mindset that I found fascinating. And that eventually led to me writing the book on the weekends. First time I meet the sports psychologist, his name is Dr. Daniel Zimmett. He lives here in Maryland. I know, Scott, you're nearby in Virginia as well. We sit down and he goes, "Okay, Sebastian, let me tell you the story of my best match ever." Turns out the sports psychologist is also a top athlete. He's got 40 national titles in the sport of handball. This is kind of like squash, but you whack the ball with your hands.
Yeah.
And Scott, he's walking me through this match from 10 years prior, and he remembers everything. It's amazing. He goes, "Point number 3, the ball hit the back wall, and I did this." And he's emotional. He's telling me about when he was on his knees making an extreme shot at the last minute. But then it's a complete letdown because he goes, "Oh, I lost the next 2 points." I go, wait. You lost the match. This was your best match ever. You're a sports psychologist, and you're telling me about a match you lost. That was his introduction to the point about learning from losing. Sports psychology is so fascinating because it's actually not about winning at all. They're all obsessed, the sports psychologists, with losing and what you do with the loss. So we start talking about this mindset. That day for him, he was playing a much stronger opponent. He realized that he was from then on able to play the game at a higher level. And that's why it was his best match ever, his best memory as a pro handball player. Scott, this kicked off, I'm kind of a research nerd in finance and economics. So it kicked off reading on sports psychology, on positive psychology, and ultimately personality psychology. Deep research, hundreds of papers, all done on the weekends, writing the book, working with Zimmett, the sports psychologist, as a consultant on the content, and ultimately the book, The Psychology of Leadership.
I love it. Well, and I'm really intrigued with this topic because I'm raising 2 sons, and both of which are athletes. One's a Division I soccer player. The other one is playing for an academy and literally moved away at a young age to pursue this. And mindset is everything. And a lot of what I've worked really hard with my boys are the things that I struggled with early on, where I was so result oriented in sports. I was so focused on the end, and I was so uncomfortable with losing. And so it's okay to feel that discomfort. You don't have to like to lose, but if you look at it from a perspective of, you know, growing, gaining something,
Right.
building upon it, there's such a different dynamic. And to this point, I geek out on this stuff as well. My son and I were driving up. He got a chance to play in front of, at Audi Field with some pros against the Ethiopian national team. He's 16 years old. He's getting ready to go up a week before he's supposed to report for the season. And, unlike most of his teammates, he doesn't live locally. So it's a 4-hour drive. And you know how 95 is. It's a 4-hour drive, but it could be a 5.5-hour drive. So it's
Yep.
going to be a 5.5-hour drive. And we actually put in Jim Murphy's book, Inner Excellence, and we're listening to it on the way up. And then my son got so into it that he was sending me messages every day, calling me every day about, hey, Dad, this concept is really good, that when I start to think negative thoughts, here's something I can do. And so we as a family love this conversation, and the research that you've done, the topic that we're talking about is so correlated to both life, parenting, and our day jobs. Whatever we do in our day jobs, there's so much correlation because it's a high stress, high reward, high intensity type of world. So it's just a fun kind of correlated connection.
And Scott, it's amazing how sometimes in the day to day, we de emphasize mindset. We don't think about mindset enough. I was asked a few months ago to give advice to students at the MIT financial engineering class. I'm thinking, what are they going to learn from me? They have all the top firms already lining up to hire them. What can I tell them that's actually going to help them enter the workforce? And I figured out a way to get their attention. I said, look, there's a study that shows that your success in your career, and if you try to explain the success in your career and you control for things like grit, mindset, personality, only 1 to 2% of your ultimate success is going to be driven by your IQ. So to me, that was the best way to get their attention. Now these really smart MIT students were paying attention. And the other piece of advice I gave them, which they all looked at me with tired eyes. They were in the middle of their exams. They weren't sleeping enough. Students in colleges, they don't eat well. I just said, take care of yourself. I'm this successful executive person coming in giving advice. Take care of yourself. Get enough sleep, and talk about athleticism and your kids playing D1 soccer and being athletes. Sleep, get the sleep, eat a decent diet, and really exercise every day. Take some slow days, but exercise regularly. For them, it was like, okay, they weren't really thinking about that. They were thinking about their exams and getting the hot internship and so on. I'll just say this about sports, Scott. I'm fascinated by the speech that Roger Federer gave. I don't know if you came across this about a year and a half ago. It was a commencement speech at Dartmouth. And I don't know if you recall, it went completely viral. Here's one of the top tennis players of all time. He looks at the students and he goes, I've played 1,500 matches in my career. I've won 80% of them. What are the best tennis players of all time? Then he looks at the crowd and he goes, what's the percentage of point that I've won, you think? Did you come across this, Scott? Do you know the percentage of points?
I have not. I don't remember the percentage of points, but I've seen just excerpts from it. I'll have to watch the whole thing.
So he goes 54%. Roger Federer, one of the top tennis players of all time, lost almost half the points. That's kind of an interesting factoid, but what he said next is what matters in this mindset. He said, whatever game you play in life, you're going to lose. Get used to it. And most of them probably, A students for most of their student career. But then he also said, the best in the world are not the best in the world because they never lose. In fact, the best in the world lose repeatedly, but they've learned to deal with it. And then he goes, they're the best in the world because they've learned to deal with it. Therefore, learn to adapt and grow. So this mindset applies so well to money management because we get decisions wrong all the time. It applies so well to business because there's so much uncertainty in what we do. How do you learn from the loss? It sounds trite, but you know what we do? We know what our reflex is as business leaders or in life and sports. We just brush it. We want to forget about it as fast as possible. But if you talk to a sports psychologist, they're gonna love Zimmet. If you take it to an extreme, this mindset as a sports psychologist, you cherish your losses because that's where you're going to grow. Now that's hard. You can say that, but that's hard. Do you know, Scott, that baseball teams, if you ask, 80% of them say they now have a full-time sports psychologist on staff. And I guarantee you that 20% that say they don't have it, they're just not telling you they have a sports psychologist on staff. So it's a powerful mindset and it applies to so many things in life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's funny. I remember sitting at the dinner table many, many years ago, and my dad is very blue collar and loved going to work, being loyal, but I don't think ever found that thing that he was great at and how it correlated to life. And I was thinking at the table, we do Sunday night dinner every Sunday night, and I'm sitting at the table and I'm thinking to myself, how lucky and blessed am I that I found a world that correlates to sports, that I can see success, I can have failure, I can learn every day, I can be surrounded by teammates. I was able to find that, and then I was thinking, man, how successful would my father have been in business if he were in that setting. Now, I'm not depreciating where I came from or how we got there because I may not be in any way who I am without that example of getting up every day, putting on the uniform, being at work, never missing, showing the confidence and the loyalty, leading a family. I'm not depreciating all the most important things of parenting and fatherhood. What I'm saying, though, is the value of those lessons of sports psychology, of just the correlation between having been an athlete and then raising them as students and being a father and how I've used that in our lives. I fail all the time as a father. Do you know how many times I got so caught up in a result as young kids, especially with my oldest? I still apologize to him on a regular basis. I'm like, man, you were my first. I was growing and learning and I got better for the second. But these are all things that correlate to life. So it's not just sports. It's how this impacts our lives and makes us better humans.
That's why I'm just starting to learn about your show and I'm quickly becoming a fan because of the way you talk about life and the balance and the different aspects of it. The sports psychology mindset is super helpful also to differentiate between luck and skill. Now, Scott, you're in the investment business. You know how important that is. The example I like to give is suppose that you and I go out to dinner and have a bottle of wine, and I decide to drive home and make it home safely. That is clearly a good outcome, but it was a horrible decision. Now, in a world with uncertainty, the opposite can also happen. I might decide to get on an Uber and the Uber might crash. Horrible outcome, great decision. How often in life, in investment management, do we fail to differentiate? If someone says, oh, I'm going to, put all my money into a meme coin and a crypto, very speculative thing and triple my money. Yeah, you might in 2 weeks and you might feel like you're a genius, but it's pure luck and you're going to be ruined if you keep doing that for more than a few months. So in sports, it's the same. Athletes have to focus on their process, on the mastery around the process, their preparation. And you know what? Sometimes it just won't go their way. The opponent is just going to show up stronger that day. The weather is going to do, the ref is, there's so much uncertainty around sports outcome. And that's why they think the same way. Was it bad luck or is it skill? Did I make the right decision? Did I follow my process? Mastery versus ego. So much applies to life. And I like how, Scott, how you're talking about leadership in particular as something that is part of life. I wrote this book, The Psychology of Leadership, and people think it's a business book. It's definitely geared towards improving business leadership, but it's actually for everyone because we're all leaders. We're all leaders, whether we want it or not, in different aspects of our lives. The way you talk about your family, you're a leader in your family. Even if you don't want to, you lead by example. Your kids are taking their cues from you, from how you behave. That makes you a leader. You're a leader in your community, in your church. So everyone has this burden in one way or the other of, at the very least, leading by example, if not formally.
Yeah, and I think that it's an honor. I mean, it's an honor to be put in a position of leadership, and how you handle it is extremely important. I saw, I'm doing some research. I saw some Instagram posts, some different interviews that you did, and I think it was Jim Quick that you were doing his show, and I met Jim a couple of times. Super interesting human. Um, and one of the things I use often when I'm talking about introverted and extroverted came from Jim. He said that he has that introverts start every day with 5 chips, and each as the day goes on, if they give away all 5 chips, they have nothing left to give anybody else. Like, they are
Yeah.
done, and it's a limited amount. Extroverts start the day with 0 chips, and they work their way through the day, building and building and building until they almost crash because they've hit 22 chips and they just can't take on anymore.
Yeah.
And I saw him at the end of an event where he had spoken, and we were at an after party kind of thing. And I said, Jim, how many chips do you have? He said, I think I've given away the 20 chips and I only started with 5. So I'm exhausted. Um, but I saw him ask a question, or you talked about something that I thought was really interesting. And it was the importance of, as a leader, setting goals that are attainable, achievable, and helping people build upon those. But I kind of took it, and maybe I interpreted it wrong, but you can build upon this. But I feel like in leadership, there's always the leaders that kind of, they just make these goals up, and they push people beyond their capacity. They don't care what your capacity is. They just care what their goal is, and they're gonna put a big number in front of you. And the leadership team and the people that you're serving are going to struggle to meet those goals. And you know it. If you're a good leader, you know that's true. But the importance of achieving and attaining and actually building and learning, failing is fine. We're gonna fail, but we have to be okay with that. And I think that was the concept of the conversation. But I thought it was really, really good. I'll let you elaborate because I did not do it justice.
Well, thank you. I think we all just learned that Jim Quick is possibly an introvert. I consider myself an introvert as well. Look, there's a theory behind it that reaches sports psychology, life, and setting goals in business, and that is the theory of flow. If you ask people in a survey in this country, are you engaged at work? You'll get about 80% responses saying, I'm not engaged in my work. We have a crisis of engagement. Why? Flow says that you're engaged when the challenge matches your capabilities. It's hard enough to keep you motivated. It's not so easy that you'll get bored, and it's not so hard that it's impossible. When we calibrate goals for teams, for individuals, we have to look at it through that lens. How can I set the milestones, the goals, to be engaging for the people who are going to actually have to do the work? So that's the theory of flow. Now, related to that, also from sports psychology, there's an important finding. And Scott, I don't know if you're involved in a lot of sports yourself, but with your kids, it's a discussion to have because sports can be anxiety inducing. Daniel Zimmett, the sports psychologist, told me athletes are incredibly neurotic. They get nervous. Don't think they're all cool and calm every point of the game. Well, it turns out that for athletic performance and other areas of life, stress increases your performance up to a point, after which you're too stressed and it's bad for you. We know stress is not good for your health, but there's a curve. It's called a Yerkes-Dodson's curve. It's been researched in psychology for decades. To me, that was a little bit liberating because when I started working on the book, it was like, I'm stressed and I'm stressing about stressing. I'm telling myself, I've been doing this for 25 years. Why am I anxious about this? I should be handling this work in a calm way. But if you realize that stress actually fuel for performance up to a point, then you at least stop stressing about stressing. You remove a layer of stress. So for athletes, it's proven in scientific research. Scott, if I ask you to run a 100-meter dash, you're going to run faster if you're a little bit nervous, if there's adrenaline pumping, if you're activated about that 100-meter dash. And that will typically happen when you're competing with others. You're going to run faster than if you're super chill and you're operating at zero stress level. So stress increases performance up to a point. Isn't that fascinating? Now we
I
can
think
sort of reframe it as activation as opposed to just something negative.
Yeah, I think it's super fascinating. I also think that it's a great driver. You know, a lot of times, this generation of children, especially, I know you see it as a leader, I'm sure. I've seen it. I've had conversations with young people where the anxiety becomes such a challenge. And what's happening is they're not allowing themselves to get to the other side of that anxious feeling, which is where success often lies. So I had a conversation one time with a young man, and I knew him through one of my nieces had dated him, and he came to our door delivering a pizza, and he was like a straight A student, super cool kid, interesting, but kind of not understanding where he wanted to go, and so he's taking a gap year, and he I go inside and I come back out and I'm going to give him a large tip, but I also want to give him that tip and I want to give him some guidance and advice because I feel like this guy is not moving in the direction he should be moving in. And he goes on to tell me that yes, I'm a great student, but I'm just so stressed. I'm so uncomfortable.
Mm.
I'm so anxious all the time. And I just asked him, I said, what do you usually find when you push through that? He goes, well, I get good grades and I do well. And I said, right, that's success. Success lies on the other side of some of that stress. You have to work through it. Now, you can't let it derail you. You can't let it debilitate you. You don't want it to keep you from doing and being who you want to be, but you have to have some level of management of that feeling. And I said, buddy, you had like a 4.5 GPA and you're not in college. Like, we don't need to go through the arguments of why college is good or why college is bad. College is good for someone like you. Okay. Maybe college isn't good for someone like me. And I did go and I did fine, but I'm more of an entrepreneur. I could have made the argument that I didn't need to do it the same way. And it was just such a very uplifting conversation. And, and one of those that I feel like young people get lost, and all of us can do this, by the way, is that when something gets hard, we stop pushing. But on the other edge of that struggle is that level of success that maybe you just haven't attained yet.
And it's a question of optimization because we know that chronic unhealthy levels of stress are bad for you. It's going to increase your blood pressure. It's going to mess up your appetite. It's going to mess up your sleep, your immune system, your sex drive. It's going to kill you. But at the same time, again, first of all, going through life at a stress level of 0 is impossible. Stress, anxiety, activation, however you want to call it, it's part of the human experience. But second, this important finding from sports psychology that is just described really well with that student, Scott, who's getting good grades, possibly in part because he's taking it seriously and he's anxious about it. I wrote this in the Psychology of Leadership. I wrote, there's an anxiety cost to high performance. Do you think that the top athlete, the basketball player, when they have the 3-point shot to make at the buzzer, do you not think their body's pumping adrenaline? Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it's a matter of balance and optimization. It's fascinating how different tasks, different sports have different optimal stress points. The 100-meter dash, you want to be really activated. You actually want your adrenaline pumping. But something more complicated, like your student taking an exam, again, the optimal stress level is not 0, but it's going to be a lower point. Archery is going to be a lower optimal point. So I find that super interesting. You know, the brain is just so mysterious and important. It's 2% of our body mass. I said that to Jim Quick because, you know, he's a brain
Oh,
expert.
he's super smart. Yeah.
It's 2% of your body mass. It's 20% of your calorie consumption. There's something going on there of your energy consumption. The chess players during tournaments, they'll burn this. I don't even know. I'm a runner. I don't even know how you burn 6,000 calories. The top level chess players just using their brains will burn 6,000 calories a day. So how do you improve your stress curve is the most important question. In the book, I have the example of Neil Armstrong as someone who had a really, really optimal stress curve where he could deliver high performance at very low stress level. The moon landing, the first manned moon landing almost famously didn't happen. It kind of changed the course of history, but the lunar module went off course. They lost communication. The computer stopped working. Armstrong had to take manual command of the module. He landed it in the wrong spot, and his heart rate really only spiked when he landed. His average heart rate for most of that mission was 75. So I use him as an example. And how do you get to a better stress tolerance? There are lots of tools from sports, mindfulness, breathing exercises. You know, you think, sometimes, especially in business, we have egos, right? We think, oh, breathing, this is trite. It's not for me. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Shaq O'Neal all had a breathing coach. So if they had one, maybe there's something to that.
It's very powerful, and I think it's interesting. I have some friends that have done some pretty great things, whether they play professional sports or were Navy SEALs on the top teams with the SEALs, and listening to them talk about the ways that they use both breath work, the practices that they go through to get into the right frame of mind to feel prepared enough so that they know that they've done all they can. It really comes so much more down to effort and what you put in so that when you're in that mode, you get that really good output. And all of them talk about how they have to maintain their heart rate. If you're coming up to bat and there's tens of thousands of fans out there, I mean, this World Series right now is unreal. I'm not even an enormous baseball fan, but I've enjoyed watching Toronto and LA. I've never liked LA sports, so I root against them all the time. And even to the point where I'm rooting for Toronto, which isn't even in America. But the reality is I'm rooting for the Canadians. And but the intensity to get up to bat and to be able to calm yourself in a moment of extreme excitement, even. These are moments they've dreamed of their whole lives, some of them. And I'm just amazed at how some of these tools that you're talking about, breath work being one of them, is such a powerful reset to the body and the brain. And I love the comments on the 20%,
Of your
of the
energy.
calories. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Look, breath work, repetition including mental repetition. There are techniques in sports where you just mentally prepare for something. I do that for presentations, for example, and it works. I have to give investment views on live national TV. That's a high pressure environment because you get 3 minutes and the host is going to challenge your views. This discussion today, Scott, is super fun and engaging. Live national TV talking about our investment views, there I'm going to get nervous before I go in the air. So I always do the same thing. I can do this, no one notices, 2 minutes before going live. I take I inhale for 4 seconds, I hold it for 4 seconds, I release for 4 seconds, and I hold it at the bottom for 4 seconds. It's called 4x4 breathing. That just gives me the little edge to calm down and go on the air on live national TV, fully present. So these things are powerful. I actually used to think that just the breathing part that, they weren't that meaningful or powerful, but it's the only way, it's the only connection between something you can control, your breathing, and a lot of things you otherwise cannot, your blood pressure, your heart rate, your stress response. So it's a meaningful connection.
Very, very powerful. And um, I I definitely have learned the power of breathing over the course of my life. One of the most impactful things is the value of recovery. We're talking about sports and a reset. I use a sauna, I use a cold plunge on a regular basis. If you're going to get into 38-degree water, you have to control your breathing.
Oh,
And
Scott,
the more that's the way to do it.
now you're coming across as a real social media person doing the cold plunge. I, you know, I might try
Have
it.
you
I'm
done
not
it?
there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm
This
intrigued.
is
There's
called a
actually,
defense mechanism to all of our listeners. He's a little concerned about it, but he wants to do it. That's what you want to do.
yeah,
You want to try it.
yeah. Look, there's research behind it. It's just such a social media thing right now. Uh,
It
but
is.
there's research behind it, and I might try it. I'm open to it. This means I have the personality trait where I score high in openness. I will try different
Well,
things.
well, you'll appreciate this, and a lot of the listeners that listen all the time understand this. I've used this example before. In 2016, when I went from what I call my lifestyle practice, and I was coaching my boys in soccer, and I was going through life kind of just comfortable, but I knew that I needed to do more. I started my own company, and when I started my own company, everything on in the brain said, "I'm ready, I'm prepared, I did all the right things." The body did not come along with the brain. I had every issue you could have, including severe back pain where I was getting sciatic nerve pain down both legs. I was sleeping in a recliner for 2 months. Like, I was never like this. I could not get a hold of the physical part of my body. Nothing I was doing was working. And so this was in 2016, well before it was as popular as it is today in 2025. But I said to myself once I turned a corner that I was going to fix this. I wanted to get back on the soccer field. I wanted to be able to run. I wanted to be able to play with my kids. And I did everything that you can imagine. So I read articles and researched. I put inserts in my shoes for my dress shoes. I started walking more. I was doing stretches. I did physical therapy. And then I also did cryotherapy. And the best thing I did for the inflammation was cryotherapy. And I started doing that every day in 2016 for like 90 straight days. And it was a game changer. So what happened was in 2020, when we had our COVID shutdown, my neighbor and he bought one of those barrels and we started doing it with the kids. And it was really fun. It was something we were doing all summer. And so we've been doing this. I felt so good when I did it that it was the hardest thing I would do all day. And you never want to do it. But when you do it, you kind of get through this. And just recently, last point, my wife has been completely anti. I mean, jokes on us about it, thinks it's ridiculous, doesn't understand it, never would. She tried it once in our bathtub. I had a bunch of ice, it was freezing. and she got in for 8 seconds and got out. And I was sitting down with her, and our kids are out of the house now, and we're laying down both reading outside. And I looked at Adrian and I said, I remember when you used to be a little bit more adventurous and try things. And she was like, "What is that supposed to mean?" I said, "I'm really disappointed in you that you're not willing to try the cold plunge. You keep telling everyone how awful it is, and you've never done more than 8 seconds of it." And she sat there, and like 30 minutes later, she goes, "All right, I'm going to go do it right now, but don't you coach me through it. Don't you tell me all the stuff. I don't want to hear your voice." And she did 3 minutes, and she felt like $1,000,000. And so I that's my quick commercial, but I will tell you the way that you have to do it is your 4x4. That 4x4x4 is helping to get you turned around, and it makes 30 seconds go by super fast because it's almost one repetition of breath. And so by the time you get through a couple of those, you've already gotten through the first minute. And if you get through the first minute, your body just relaxes in a way that you're not used to. You know you're not going to die. So I think
Well,
you'll love it.
well, Scott, you're a wonderful salesman. I'm convinced now. I got to go and try it today. No, seriously, there is research behind it. I used to think the breathing techniques weren't that helpful. I started experimenting with them and found them helpful. So maybe that's the next stage. I'm going to go full social media bro and do the cold plunge.
Just don't record it on social media. Do it
Yeah,
all
yeah,
behind the scenes. It's way
yeah,
more altruistic that way, altruistic to your body.
yeah. I was just reading a post today from an influencer who was saying, get up an hour earlier, do the cold plunge, do this, do that, don't look at your phone. And I never comment. I'm not. This was on Substack, which is not really a social media platform. Maybe it's trying to be. But the
Yep.
one thing I had to comment this morning. I commented. I wrote, "Remember, also go to bed an hour earlier, because if you sleep is
Truth.
just one of those hacks, like more than a hack, it's crucial. So all the advice about getting up early and doing a lot of things that are good for you, just remember, go to bed earlier too. Don't cut the sleep down.
Well, I started wearing the Whoop in 2019, and I
Yep.
I still have it on today. But I will tell you the most important and valuable lesson that I learned. There were two things. One goes back to an earlier point you were making, and that is calming yourself down when you don't realize how much energy you're using when your brain is on, when you're really pressed at work. I was doing a lot of presentations and a lot of leading our teams and just pumping people up and being in front of people on a regular basis. And I was noticing that my Whoop was registering as if I had been working out. I mean, hard,
Yep.
heavy cardio workouts. And so I wasn't understanding why I was so tired when I would get home. And I also noticed that I was not getting quality sleep and I wasn't getting enough. And so I changed those two things by calming myself before any presentations, by focusing and making sure that I paid attention to how I was delivering it. I didn't have to change the dynamic of my energy, but I could focus a little bit more on being present versus kind of worried or excited and then on top of that, to your point, that extra hour of sleep. I mean, going from 5.5 to 6 to 7 to 8 is a major change that adds so much value to your life.
Big time. And people are drinking much less nowadays because we're all wearing these things, and you realize, oh, I only had one drink, two drinks, and it completely messes up your sleep. You get
Kills it.
up, you get a score of 30. And so I was just reading on the financial news that the companies that sell alcohol are not doing well right now. So,
Yeah.
there are good things going on in society around health and fitness and self improvement. I kind of say things about social media tongue in cheek, but there's so many things to be depressed about. But there are lots of things to be optimistic and positive about, like those trends of people just taking better care of themselves. It's really worth it.
It's valuable, and we could maybe now, because you've called it a social media frenzy, we can do it. I'll do it with you. We'll do it together, and we'll post it on social media, and we'll hold the book together. We'll read the book in the plunge.
All
It'll
right.
be
That'll
a
sell some
stunt.
books.
Yeah. Hey, I'm curious, when we talk about the psychology of leadership, how are you leveraging the research and learning that you've done inside of your own family?
So in the book, I wrote 18 principles, and I got to say, all 18 apply to home life as well. For example, on personality, when you start learning about personality psychology, you develop more empathy for people. People sometimes think understanding personality is a bit nefarious or manipulative. It's the exact opposite. You begin to understand where people are coming from. Earlier, Scott, you talked about Jim Quick and the example of being introverted and how it's difficult to be in social situations all day long. Because if you're an introvert, it depletes your energy. If you're an extrovert, you actually gain energy from being in social situations. But if you begin to understand those traits in people, you develop more empathy. So, my wife, Anne, is extremely agreeable, and agreeableness is a personality trait. Scott, do you consider yourself high or low in agreeableness?
I would probably be
Meaning,
low. I would be
right,
lower and agreeable.
and that's sort of self-awareness, right? If you high in agreeableness, you're more of a people pleaser. You don't like to disagree. If you're low in agreeableness, sometimes it's more intellectual. You like to debate. I thought, it's like sense of humor. Most people think they have a sense of humor. Most people think they score high in agreeableness. Your answer shows a lot of self-awareness, because if you run a survey, most people won't say I score low in agreeableness. I actually reveal my personality trait scores in the book, The Psychology of Leadership, in the third section. So there's no hiding from the fact that when I took the test, I scored low in agreeableness. And of course, I disagreed with the result, which is consistent and kind of a paradox, which
Yeah.
scored low in agreeableness. But so my wife is extremely agreeable, right? And understanding that has helped me, because she'll not necessarily challenge me, or she'll not necessarily expect a different view of what she wants or wants to do. A simple example is, it's Friday night, we go out on our regular date. What do you want to do? She won't put her foot down and express exactly what she wants to do. And if I'm not careful, week after week after week after week, we're just going to do what I want to do. And so understanding her level of somewhat extreme agreeableness helps me just draw from her what she really wants and kind of handle some of our communications differently. Now, parenting and leadership in many ways are similar as well, whether it's understanding how you set goals, understanding empathy, developing listening skills. And there, with my kids, I have to learn that, for example, the two of them are quite different. I have videos with my daughter out there where I teach her about finance and investing. We started doing this when she was 10. It's all over LinkedIn. She loves being on camera. The last one we did, she was 14. Now that she started as a 10-year-old, and the last one she's wearing makeup and it's just all grown up. But this resonated with people because I'm this technical financial guy wearing a tie, but trying to explain compound interests, interest rates, really important financial literacy concepts to my daughter, which for a talking head like me actually requires a certain effort, right? So this resonated with people. But the point is, my daughter's an extrovert. And when I talk to my son, who's now 17, about doing a podcast, he basically said that he'd rather die, right? So very different personalities here, where one's an introvert, one's an extrovert. I'm just giving you examples with personality psychology, but there's so much about goal setting for kids and parenting, how you think about goals. Scott, if you ask, the surveys show that people in their 20s 80% of them say they want to become rich. That's their goal. 50% of them say they want to become famous. That's their goal. By the way, nothing wrong with these goals. They're motivating and it's exciting to pursue those goals. But positive psychology shows reaching those goals it's not what's going to make you happy. What's going to make you happy is engagement, positive relationships, meaning in your life, and long-term accomplishment. Basically, the stuff you talk about in your podcast. So when you're parenting, you want to, for me, it's been a revelation really to understand positive psychology and try to impart this to my kids. Think about goals in terms of what's going to make you thrive in the long run. There's a story that I have in the book about two authors that are hanging out at a billionaire's party. It's all rich people. This actually happened. Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller. Kurt Vonnegut asks Joseph Heller, you wrote Catch 22, one of the best sellers of all time. Do you realize that our host, who's a billionaire, makes more money than you in one day than you'll make ever by selling these books? And Joseph Heller responds, maybe, but I have something he will never have. And Vonnegut asks, what is that? And Heller simply responds, I have enough. And so those are the types of discussions I'm having with my kids. I want them to be ambitious, but not at the cost of what really matters in life. And if you have to pick one, pick positive relationships. We're trying to foster that as a family, as a value. Positive relationships in your life not only are going to help you thrive more than money, but they're also, this is fascinating, you're going to be healthier. In the Harvard study on long-term happiness, people that had positive relationships in their lives had better health outcomes. How fascinating is that?
It's to me, it's just validating to what I've always seen in the results that I understand. Relationships outweigh transactions on a regular basis. And I think when you look at life, most people will go through life building transaction after transaction. What can this person do for me? What can this career do for me? What can this job do for me? What can this friend do for me? But if we flip that and we start to look at what we can do for them, wherever we're at, it's empowering, and you start to build true quality relationships. I do this podcast, a couple times a week. We release one show a week. I have met some amazing humans who have become great friends, where if I fly into Chicago, I know I can call two people that have been on my show. I will have a great time. We'll have a lunch. We'll have a coffee, maybe a beverage after hours if it's the one of the other guys that I hang out with. But the reality is, building relationships is the best part of what I'm doing here. And I'm learning as I go. I'm having a blast. Like, I enjoy this relationship building and learning together. And it's not just about doing the show. It's not just about listening to what book is new. It's great to do that. But if I can help leverage that and get more people to buy The Psychology of Leadership and see all the facets of how it's empowering them, and one person has changed from that, it's well worth it. I want one comment I wanted to make on your personality. I have used personality assessments for many, many years in every employee relationship. We've charted every employee at our organization. We had over 40, 50 scatter plot charts, and then we had a baseball card essentially made for every person. And it was exactly what you said. It wasn't about the selfishness of knowing who we are. It was the value of knowing how to better communicate with our teammates. If I know you're analytical and I need to provide you with research and data to support my point, me just saying that this is the case is not going to be enough for you. I've got to remember that. That doesn't mean that you're challenging me or you don't trust me. And so these are things that we did. I've also done this with my entire family. So I've done it with my immediate family. I've done it with my parents, with my siblings. And it's fascinating because there are things that you can think back on, disagreements, challenges, childhood challenges, like any of this stuff. And you're like, wow, coming from this perspective, this empathetic perspective of looking at their perspective from it can change the whole dynamic. So I love that concept and how valuable that can be with your kids. And my sons are both very different from each other. One's more introverted, one is more extroverted. And they're both actually doing social media in two different ways right now, which is kind of interesting to watch. I'm surprised about the introverted person. My son Braden, but he's doing stuff with Bible study, and he's very he's more scripted and talks about something that matters to him, and it's very purposeful and deliberate and disciplined. And then my older son is doing TikTok lives and turning a profit and making money on these, and it's really interesting. And he's just off the cuff and super. So I love the way that you're using this in your own family. And I have to check out the LinkedIn post with your daughter now. It makes me super interested to hear what that was like, and maybe watch the progression, because that's got to be cool to do.
I got the idea to teach my daughter about the basics of financial literacy after I published a finance book titled Beyond Diversification. And I got a couple reviews that hurt my feelings, Scott. The reviews said, "This is too complicated. I don't understand it." And we kind of pitched the book for a general audience. So some people picked it up and thought it was too technical. And I started thinking, how can I make something really complex the most simple possible? And it's in the middle of COVID, so I'm in the house. My daughter's there. And I had this light bulb moment, because they don't teach this in high school, or they try, but they don't really teach it from an investment perspective. It's more about budgeting, which is interesting, but there's so much to teach to high school kids about, or middle school kids about, just investing and financial literacy from the investment side of it. So I got that idea and we started doing this. Yeah, it's all over LinkedIn. Look, the interesting thing about personality psychology, I talk about this in the psychology of leadership. You can change your personality. I don't know if you agree with that, Scott, but only about 35-40% of your personality is heritable based on the research, meaning you kind of inherit it in your genes or from your parents or grandparents. The rest is acquired. And for example, the personality trait conscientiousness, it's highly correlated with business success, with academic grades, with leadership ascension, like getting the promotion to become a leader. If you score high in conscientiousness, you're going to do well in these areas. It means you're disciplined, you show up on time, you're organized, your desk is always neat, you do what you said you were going to do. That's a prized personality trait. Now, you don't want to take it to an extreme, because you're going to become a perfectionist, and that's going to drive you and others around you crazy. But you know what? I explain in the book, you can train yourself to become more conscientious by using the power of habit. And realizing, based on Charles Duhigg and James Clear's research, that small daily habits, like your cold plunge, Scott. I gotta say, I don't know if I'm not convinced yet, but if we get together and we do this for social media, maybe I will. I won't be wearing a Speedo though. I'll wear
No Speedos. Yeah, no Speedos.
But so daily habits, small daily habits compound, accumulate to gigantic changes and gigantic results in your life. And that is key to building conscientiousness. And it's trainable and simple, just persistent, small daily habits. People think I have a full-time, very stressful job. They think it's almost superhuman to write a book. Not at all. It's not at all that. It's not that hard. I just did 1,000 to 1,200 words a week on Saturday mornings and a little bit on Sunday mornings. It's just a writing habit, not a huge habit, just a few hours a week, but very consistently over a long period of time. And then all of a sudden you have this wonderful result, right? Small habits compound to gigantic changes and gigantic results. You just have to stick to them. That's how you train conscientiousness. That's how you change your personality trait related to conscientiousness.
I love both those books, James Clear and Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. Phenomenal books. Atomic Habits, James Clear, both extremely valuable reads. And if you haven't read those books, it's a great way to start. I love anchoring, the ability to anchor something you're already doing and building a habit
Yeah.
around it. I mean, these are extremely valuable things I've used in my life and career many, many times. And I believe that we can continue to refine ourselves, that we might be made a certain way, but that refinement is there through growth. And that's really the sports psychologist, everybody that you're talking about throughout this conversation believes that it's about getting better just a little bit every single day. Sebastian, it's been an honor to have you on the show. Tell people how they can find you, and then how they can buy the book, where they could find more, and get on this learning curve with you, so they can find all the things they're searching for in the psychology of leadership.
Scott, this has been a ton of fun. I'm almost sold on the cold plunge. I'm on the fence, but I'll think about it. The book is for sale everywhere, so it's very easy to find. Amazon is the easiest way. And if you want to find me on social media, I'm on different platforms, but the easiest way is on LinkedIn. Very easy to find there. Sebastian Page on LinkedIn.
Okay, well, Sebastian, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to it. We might have to do the next one from a cold plunge,
Yes.
but it would be a
Oh,
very
the
quick
whole podcast?
podcast. It would be a very quick podcast. We'd do it like Kevin Hart does at his show, where they get in the ice tubs and they do their whole podcast that way. But anyway, it's awesome to speak with you, and I look forward to learning more from you and following you on the platforms as well. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Likewise, Scott. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.